From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We start in Colombia, where 3 officials from the Attorney General's office have been killed on the border with Ecuador. Douglas Dimitri Guerrero, Jair Alfonso Montenegro, and Willington Alexander Montenegro were murdered as they were heading to Pasto, the capital city of southwestern department of Nariño. According to Colombian authorities, the attack was perpetrated by the armed group Oliver Sinisterra Front on Wednesday afternoon. This is the same armed group that kidnapped and killed 3 Ecuadorian journalists from the El Comercio newspaper and an Ecuadorian couple last April.
Registramos con profundo dolor.
With deep sorrow, we announced the killing of 3 officers working for the Attorney General's office in the sector of Guayacana, in the department of Nariño, in kilometer 78 of the Tumaco-Nim road. I would like to express all of our solidarity with the relatives and to share the deep pain surrounding everyone at our office. I would like to thank all the institutions for their messages of support after this tragic event. My office will do anything in its power to bring those responsible for these killings to justice. We are determined to continue in our fight against criminal gangs in the area. Nothing is going to stop us. We will strengthen our efforts to eliminate criminal gangs working in Guayacana in memory of Douglas, Willington, and Jair.
Members of social organizations met with the United Nations delegation in Colombia to denounce the murders of social leaders and continuous threats to their territories. According to the UN, more than 100 social leaders have been murdered so far in 2018.
The United Nations organization in Colombia issued a warning about the humanitarian crisis in the country after the wave of murders of social leaders.
For me, it seems terrible that in a country that is currently going through a historic moment, where we will have a new government and where we have a peace process, the people are murdered for speaking up.
International organizations qualified as brutal the murder of social leaders that defended life and the dignity of the communities.
There is a difficult human rights situation that social leaders are facing in Colombia. Every day they are victims of murders and brutal violence. We have proved this in the last few weeks.
Threatened social leaders arrived to Chocó, Valle del Cauca, Meta, Guajira, Sucre, Cauca, Nariño, and Putumayo to denounce the constant murders of social leaders in the country.
These are systematic killings. 36 leaders from COCAM have been recently murdered. Why are they persecuting those who beg for peace to transform their territories? They are persecuting the leaders that have defended peace and reject the use of illicit crops to transform their territories. Doesn't it raise a flag that more than 200 leaders of Marcha Patriótica have been murdered?
They also denounced the failure of the state to provide guarantees and said the local government's answer is that there is no money. They added they don't trust the authorities, the police, or the prosecutor's office.
We've gone to the police to denounce violence to a social leader before. As soon as we left the police station, the paramilitary called us to tell us, "We know you went to the police station to file a complaint." That's why we don't believe in the police or the prosecutors.
Leaders are demanding the government for security guarantees in the campesino communities and demanded the authorities to support measures of self-protection that the communities are taking in their territories.
The Attorney General's office in Colombia announced it will launch an investigation into the alleged participation of government agents into the recent killings of social leaders and human rights defenders.
State agents are being co-opted by criminal gangs that are exterminating social leaders. We ask that mayors and governors take responsibility to defend people's lives and integrity, but we also ask citizens to help us investigate this violence and to tell us if they know about corrupt officials anywhere in the country or of any members of the police who have had a hand in the killings.
Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra has proposed a judicial reform to end with corruption after the release of several audios revealing judges and members of the National Council of Magistrates taking part in illegal activities. In the audios, judges are heard offering penalty reductions, asking for favors, and setting rates for shady deals.
I want to announce that my government will undertake this reform, which will allow us to build an effective, timely, efficient, transparent, and incorruptible judicial system. I called the State Council and asked Congress to apply Article 157 of the Political Constitution to remove the members of the National Council of Magistrates. Audios reveal not only that the people called to administer justice acted with an enormous degree of immorality, but the existence of mechanisms, practices, and vices that prevent and contaminate the judicial system and must be eradicated.
Meanwhile, people took to the streets of capital city Lima to decry the scandal and to condemn corruption in the country. Protesters marched and gathered outside the Supreme Court headquarters, carrying banners and chanting to reject another case of alleged corruption involving the highest levels of the country's institutions.
The judicial system has been corrupt for a long time, and this is the evidence. This is only the tip of the iceberg. It has just been announced that there are more videos, that there are more people infiltrated. IDL reporters were brave enough to bring this judicial investigation to public attention, to show us that we are living under a corrupt justice system.
Still in Peru, a group of women shared their dramatic stories during the internal conflict as they saw their experience. The group of Andean women were displaced from their homes during the conflict that hit the country between 1980 and 2000. Now they gather every day after lunch to sew their stories into colorful scenes known as arpilleras. In silence or singing Andean chants, they cut the pieces of the cloth, give them the shapes of trees, animals, houses, people or rivers to transform them into living memories. But the pieces are also tragic testimonies of violence, murders, and families fleeing from home. After a day of intense meetings and of lobbying accusations against each other, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is holding its second day of meeting in Brussels. U.S. President Donald Trump held a press conference and said he is happy that tremendous progress has been made and that NATO members have agreed to invest 2% of their annual gross domestic product on defense. Earlier, Trump attacked the European leaders, saying that they have not met their financial commitment to the alliance. And after leaving NATO member nations exasperated due to his fiery comments, U.S. President Donald Trump is scheduled to visit the UK on Thursday, as British citizens have eagerly prepared for him. Over 100,000 people are expected to gather in London with a strong message for Trump. Activists from different organizations are planning a series of protests across the country under the banner Carnival of Resistance. Some of them have also inflated a giant Trump baby. And this balloon will be flown over Parliament on Friday when the US President meets Prime Minister Theresa May. This is Trump's first official visit to the country since becoming president.
What we see in Trump is somebody who has an overinflated ego, and when things don't go his own way, he throws his toys out of his pram. But he's also, as robust as he may seem to be, he's also very, very thin-skinned when it comes to being ridiculed. And so we thought that this Trump baby was a fantastic way of representing all of that about Trump and of getting through to him.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after a video from our multimedia team.
to say we're capitalist, and that's just the way it is.
Welcome back. Indigenous communities in Honduras continue to face concessions made by the government on mining and hydroelectric industries without any community consultation.
For members of the community of Santa Elena in La Paz, the fight against concession and lack of regulation has led to criminalization and murders.
The worst impacts have been state violence. Why? Because we have comrades who have been killed following military harassment. We've already lost one person.
For those communities, Protocol 169 of the International Labour Organization has been of great help, although in some cases the government is not respecting the mechanism.
If
we did not have that agreement, we would have been treated as Ladinos. In our country, the term Ladino means to defend rights. The only thing that is clear here is that there is still a power struggle.
The northwestern zone of the country is the area most affected by mining and hydroelectric concessions, with more than 700 ongoing projects.
In recent years, Honduras has seen more than 30 consultation processes be prompted, mostly through town hall meetings in different municipalities in the North Coast. The majority of these processes have been in the departments of Atlántida, Cortés, Lloro, and Colón.
In some municipalities, the mayors respect the consultation process, especially when the councilman in charge does not represent the government party.
Now what the mayor is doing is that when these companies want to enter the municipalities, he immediately calls the people and introduces the companies. When the people say no, the issue moves on further.
At the National Congress of Honduras, a law is being introduced to regulate these consultations, a law in which indigenous communities had no say in.
Workers from the Argentinian state news agency TELAM continue to protest against massive layoffs. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
The TELAM workers' peaceful protest continues after the 357 layoffs by the government of Mauricio Macri, which still has given no answer to the protesters' demands. Former TELAM workers are demanding that the head of communication, Hernan Lombardi, gives an answer to this complex situation. Journalists from different media outlets and human rights organizations have given their support to the workers that were laid off by TELAM. The Argentinian people have also joined the protest that appears as if it could well continue for days to come. Back to you.
That was Edgardo Esteban from Argentina. Former President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, will remain in jail, but the conflict over the Workers' Party pre-candidate seems destined to continue. A correspondent in Sao Paulo, Mia Alberti, brings us more.
Lula da Silva will remain in jail. That was the final verdict of the president of the Brazilian Supreme Court of Justice. Carmen Lúcia's decision came after Sunday's legal battle between two judges, one trying to release the former president, the other wanting to keep him in jail. The day has been deemed a black day for the history of the law in Brazil. Prosecutor Silvana Battini says it just added more fuel to the fire.
The decision to free Lula was precarious, came at a time which surprised everyone. It did not bring balance. It somehow added more fuel to the fire. It brought more divergences, more conflict.
A conflict that looks set to continue. The National Council of Justice is investigating the three judges involved in Sunday's case for possible misconduct. Judge Rogério Favreto, who ordered Lula's release, Judge Sérgio Moro, who blocked the other overstepping in authority, and Judge Gebra Neto, who blocked the decision twice. The case has divided the legal community across the country, revealing just how fragile and murky the system currently is.
Nothing dealing with ex-President Lula has unanimity in Brazil, and nothing that deals with legal aspects that has unanimity in Brazil today. Brazil today is going through a moment of great division because legal and political issues are overlapping, especially political issues involving a charismatic leader.
Among Lula's supporters, at least there is a consensus. The former president should be free. Many of them, including former President Dilma Rousseff, have gathered at the Workers' Party headquarters to continue demanding his release.
The system has no morals. I'm convinced that the strength of Lula is growing. People have realized what is happening in the country. I want to see the next poll. In my opinion, Lula will go up in the polls.
We, the Workers' Party, because of the commitment we have with the Brazilian people for almost 40 years, we are not going to abandon Lula's candidacy. We will be recording Lula on August 15 in Brasilia with a big popular demonstration.
The former president has been in Curitiba's federal prison for 3 months. He's serving a 12-year jail sentence for corruption and money laundering. His defense team says the charges are politically motivated and say they're using all means necessary to free him, possibly in time for the presidential election this October. Mia Alberti, Telesur, in São Paulo.
Archaeologists have found an underground room inside the Mexican pyramid of Teopanzolco in the city of Cuernavaca. Experts say damage to the pre-Hispanic pyramid in central Mexico was done due to the September 19th earthquake, has revealed an older structure that was covered by the building. The temple inside probably dates back to the 1150 to 1200 AD and was discovered after the magnitude 7.1 quake caused parts of the pyramid to sink or lean. The National Institute of Anthropology and History said they are doing repair work. The Aztec-era pyramid was built sometime between 1200 and the Spanish conquest in 1521. Croatia fans in capital city Zagreb burst into celebration as their team reached the World Cup final for the first time ever, after their 2-1 win over England in extra time. Fans wearing red and white jumped and shouted as the match ended, waving Croatian flags and lighting flares. The national team made history and put the country in the map of football achievements. And just a bit of history, Croatia declared its independence in 1991 after a bloody war, and the team's stars Luka Modric, Ivan Rakitic, Vedran Korluka and Dejan Lovren were refugees during this conflict just a couple of decades ago. And in the pitch, Yuri Cortés, an AFP photographer, was also part of the celebrations as he was rolled up by Croatian players as they were celebrating their second goal. The photographer continued taking pictures and got a unique testimony of the team's joy. After the incident, Cortés was helped by Croatian players who apologized to him and helped him recover. Globalization is also present in the football pitch. Migration is reality, each time more evident in the national teams, and the World Cup is proving it. European countries' teams hold the highest percentage of footballers with a migrant background.
Swedish footballer Jimmy Durmaz has suffered through racial hatred and even death threats. Racists accuse him of not being fully committed to the team after the player of Turkish ancestry gave away the foul that led to Toni Kroos's late winner for Germany at the World Cup. However, racist attacks prompted a wave of solidarity.
I was sad. I was disappointed in how they treated my brother, because he's one of the Swedish people here and he represents the Swedish national team, so it was hard to me to see.
Belgian football player Romelu Lukaku put the racism he's experienced into words. "When it's going well, I'm a Belgian striker. When it's not going well, I'm a Belgian striker of Congolese descent," he said at the Players' Tribune. European national teams actually have the highest number of immigrant players among their ranks. France, the national melting pot of immigrants in Europe, heads the ranking with 78.3% of their players with a migrant background, even though France has just 7% of migrants in its national population. In second place is Switzerland. 65.2% of its footballers have an immigrant origin, even though immigrants make up just 24% of the Swiss population. Switzerland is followed by Belgium and England, which have 47.8% of migrant footballers out of a population of 12.1% in Belgium and 9.2% in England. 39.1% of German national team footballers have an immigrant background, in a population of 11.3% in the country. The contrast is even larger in Portugal, with 30.4% of their players compared to just 3.8% of its population. National teams from Spain and Sweden have 17.4% of immigrant footballers. In Spain, the immigrant population represents 10% of its citizens, while in Sweden, 8%. And finally, 13% of the players on Denmark's national team come from immigrant origin, even though immigrants make just 8.2% of Denmark's population.
We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. Thousands of mourners in Bosnia and Herzegovina gathered for the 23rd anniversary of the massacre of Srebrenica and converged at its memorial site to bury the remains of 35 victims recently identified. Mixed feelings of sadness and relief took over the mourners, relatives and residents in the area were the wounded of the Bosnian War. These wounds haven't healed yet. In July 1995, at least 8,000 Bosnian Muslims were killed in the eastern city of Srebrenica, a genocide that became the symbol of the horrors perpetrated during the Balkan Wars that led to the collapse of Yugoslavia. Around 1,000 victims of Srebrenica, killed and buried in unmarked graves, have yet to be identified or even located.
I just buried my nephew, who was 16 when he died. Regarding feelings, they are mixed. On the one hand, we are glad we found his remains, that his bones could have their final resting place, that we simply know where his grave is, that we can come here and pray for him.
Well, we are glad we know where his grave is, where he's buried, but the wounds remain the same. They don't heal. They always will remain the same. They hurt.
Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
The government of Myanmar has organized peace talks with different ethnic groups in an attempt to convince them of a ceasefire. For decades, Myanmar has fought with different ethnic groups, the worst case being with the army crackdown of Rohingyas last year, which has left over 6,000 Rohingyas dead and forced over 700,000 to flee to Bangladesh. State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi will also attend the six-day summit in Naypyidaw. The Thai Navy SEALs have released video of their rescue operation for the 12 trapped boys and their football coach. The authorities said the boys were sedated before taking them out of the cave to avoid panic attacks. For certain parts of the way, they were strapped on a stretcher. The boys were stuck in the flooded cave for 18 days and are currently receiving medical care at a hospital. Doctors say they are all in good health.
Actually, they slept through most of the operation, but doctors were there, constantly checking their condition and their pulse, because that is their job. I didn't have anything to do with that.
The World Trade Organization has started the first session of its 7th Trade Policy Review in Geneva, Switzerland. 30 officials from China are attending the summit. Tariffs on imports and intellectual property rights are the main subject of the meeting. The delegation from China emphasized their commitment to a multilateral trading system.
A court in Germany has ruled that Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont can be extradited to Spain. The former Catalan president is accused of misusing public funds. Puigdemont also faces charges of rebellion against Madrid's rule, but the German justice dismissed this crime. A source close to Puigdemont's legal team said he will appeal the extradition, whatever charge is based on. Ireland's Senate has approved a new law. Let's see more about it. The Control of the Economic Activity of the Occupied Territories Bill passed through the Irish Parliament's upper house on Wednesday. by 25 votes to 20 and will now advance to the committee stage. Israel's foreign ministry lashed out at Ireland immediately after it passed the bill, stating on that the Irish Senate has given its support to a populist, dangerous and extremist anti-Israel boycott initiative that hurts the chances of dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians. That's between quotes. Ireland is one of Israel's strongest critics in Europe, and relations between the countries have strained on several recent occasions, typically over popular Irish support for the Palestinian cause. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but there's another stories, as you know, you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities.